going to talk about something a little bit different for this presentation. We've heard a lot about MOOCs. We're going to shift a little bit and talk about how we're tackling some big problems in customer education and consumer learning, as well as corporate learning. And for the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you how Intellim, the software company that built the platform that hosts learning at scale, is working to solve some of learning's biggest challenges with the science of learning. So I'll also share with you some preliminary results from some of our internal studies. And at the end, I'll present a few opportunities to collaborate with us and leverage a data set that includes millions of learners. So let's chat a little bit about Intellim. So this is our office. You can see our Game of Thrones room here, along with our bar, which we call Tequila Steve's. It's a fun place to work in the heart of Atlanta, but we're serious about one thing, and that's leveraging science to deliver efficient and effective customer education and internal learning programs. One thing we're not fans of are neuromyths or fluffy opinion pieces that masquerade as best practices. There's a lot of that in learning and development. And so we're not fans. We love to rely on science. We like substance. We like evidence. And we've built our platform around that evidence. And then we share best practices with our clients, who include companies like Google, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, a whole slew of organizations that you've probably heard of. So with that dedication in mind, Intellim recently established a learning science department, and our goal is to conduct experiments that will lead to a better understanding of what works in customer education and corporate training. So to do this, I've enlisted the help of faculty members from across the country. We currently have 2 studies in progress. One is an exploratory customer education study that will serve as the foundation for future research. In future studies, I hope to be able to measure the correlation between customer education and customer loyalty, which we've operationalized as customer churn. I believe we can reduce the customer acquisition costs using customer education, and I'd like to be able to show that educating consumers is a worthwhile investment. We're also conducting a study related to what Richard Meyer calls segmentation. So if we can take a massive SCORM package and chunk it up into smaller modules, will learners consume more content? That's kind of the main question there. So if the navigation of the content is consistent with the navigation of the platform, we're also looking at that as well. Will learners find themselves so engaged that they continue learning? Will learners be more likely to find themselves in a state of flow with these smaller chunks of content that have that consistent navigation? So those are just a couple of things that we're working on right now. One other way that we're showing our commitment to the science of learning is through Learning Science Weekly, a newsletter that delivers actionable insights for customer education and corporate training. So if you go to learningscienceweekly.com, you'll see you can sign up for our newsletter there. And each week we highlight new and emerging research. We're going to include some of the content that you've shared here at Learning at Scale. We've also included past articles that people may have missed. So in our blast from the past section. We've also started featuring students who are doing cutting edge research in learning science. And the newsletter is a great way to keep up with what's going on in the field. So I hope you'll subscribe. And please, if you have any feedback or suggestions, definitely let us know. Our email address is on the site. It's editor@learningscienceweekly.com. Also, if you have any students who are doing some really innovative research, we'd love to feature them. So our learning science department finds and summarizes relevant literature on how people learn and connects that research to practical implications for customer education and corporate training. We're also working to generate new scientific discoveries that are relevant for corporate training and customer education by conducting cutting-edge research in science of learning. So we've taken a page from organizations like Deans for Impact and Digital Promise that are working to implement these evidence-based teaching and learning practices in the K-12 and college space. And we've applied those principles to our own practice in customer education and corporate training. Rodinger's 2013 article tells us that education does not adhere to the medical model of evidence-based practice, and the same is true for corporate education, unfortunately. So at Intellim, we are working to change that by engaging with our clients and university partners to establish a series of best practices that make workplace and consumer learning effective and efficient. So those will be published shortly. And I think on the next slide I have, oh, no, it's one more. We've got some results for you, but we're also committed to conducting experiments that lead to best practices in this space. So right now we're collecting data for our segmentation flow study. I haven't completed the analysis yet, but it looks like across the board, more learners are more likely to complete content when the content is not in a bulky SCORM package, which is something that we find quite often in corporate training and customer education. We believe that the consistency that you can develop with a segmented course that has navigation that is consistent throughout can contribute to a sense of flow for students, which then leads to higher content completion rates. This study should conclude in October, and I plan to present and publish our findings. And right now, this is kind of what we're looking at. So if we have true is these segmented courses, that's the blue line, and then the teal line is those bulky SCORM packages. And so you can see here, not sure yet if these results are statistically significant, but you can still see that there's quite a gap there. We're also conducting a study on customer education in partnership with faculty from the University of Alabama and Ohio University, excuse me. But there's still a lot that we don't know, and that's where I could use your help. So Intellim has been around for over 20 years, and our database contains over 200 million enrollment records. There are millions of users in the system. Essentially, we have this massive storehouse of data, right, stretching back decades. And we also have corporate partners willing to engage in experimentation to discover interventions that can improve learning outcomes. But I'm only one person. I can't do it all on my own. So Neil Heffernan and other leaders in learning science have called for ed tech companies to open up their data. And that's kind of what we want to do. Knowing, of course, that we're not in the K-12 space, excuse me, and knowing that we are kind of in a different field than a lot of you. However, Ulrich Boser has said that too little has been done to take advantage of the data created by learning platforms. So this is our first step towards that, and this is my official call for help. I could use some smart partners with interesting research agendas who are looking for data. So let's work together. My email address, and I'm open for questions. And I think I'm well within time.
Fantastic. Yes, thank you, Julia. Thank you for sharing what is going on in terms of research and how much is happening at Intellim. There's one question I see right now from Cheyenne, who asked if you could give a few examples of customer education.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great question. So customer education is something that I'll use software as a service organizations as an example. So let's say, actually, what's the name of the Gatherly? Is that the one that we're using? So the way that Gatherly takes you through that tutorial at the very beginning, that's customer education. That's consumer, like we use the phrase consumer learning, but that's customer education. Google, Justin is throwing out here, Google does a ton of customer education to teach people how to use their ad buying systems. Pinterest does the same, Twitter, also Facebook. So they're educating people on how to use their systems so that they can then use those systems more effectively and efficiently, and essentially bring Facebook and those other businesses more money. So Jack says, you mentioned old data. How fast does the content to teach change over time? So it definitely depends. So we have organizations that are more traditional in their training efforts. So I think of organizations like G4S, which is a worldwide security guard company. We also have organizations like the Home Depot, so very traditional, very, they don't change that often. And then we also have organizations like the Googles and the Facebooks, where they're consistently churning out new content. And so I think that there's a range. And as far as what the distribution would look like, to be honest, I'm not sure. I think it would be really interesting to pull some reports to see who's publishing more content, maybe those traditional ones or the new like tech companies. What other questions? And I'm gonna have to check out Renee. Thank you for that. The 2015 paper, I'll definitely have to check that one out.
Great. Any other questions for Julia? We also have a 10-minute break coming up in case you want to keep on chatting or meet up in the Gatherly. But for now, let's thank Julia again for sharing.
Thank you all, and we appreciate the opportunity to be your platinum sponsor.